brown envelope journalism. It's unethical, it's dangerous, and it's nasty. On screen, on Facebook, and on Twitter, this is Mags on Media. Well, the blurb from the newspaper says it was born in the days of hope and fear when the UDF was still in its infancy, when Kaizer Chiefs were soccer champions, and Brenda Fassie was a new name on the music scene. 30 years on, in a very tough and a very fragmented market, how has City Press remade itself, and where is it going? 30 years from now, where is the paper going to be? In fact, 30 years from now, will we still have newspapers around? Well, two guests, the editor Ferial Haffajee, welcome, thank you very much for joining us, along with assistant editor Adriaan Basson. Ferial, let me start with you. 30 years ago, were you reading? What were you reading?
I was, but I was reading The Star, and certainly not City Press. Later on, I migrated to City Press. But I wasn't reading it then. No?
You love newspapers, don't you?
I love newspapers.
Why?
It runs in my veins. It still does. I love the iPad apps as well. But I think that they still present us with a picture of our country that I'm not getting anywhere else. I'm not getting it online and on Twitter, which I spend a lot of time on. I still think they speak to souls and parts of the nation that the other social media doesn't touch.
Adriaan Basson, in a very competitive Sunday market, as I mentioned in my introduction, where does this remade brand sit right now, and who's reading it?
Jeremy, I think, City Press, what we're trying to do is really to strive to excellence, and we try that throughout our sections. So in the news section, we try to have a breaking news story every Sunday. We've really focused on investigative journalism for the past few months and years, and it's always been excellent. City Press is known as the must-read for politics, and there's still a lot of room of improvement, and we're getting there. But I think now City Press is what I hear from readers, and what I read on Twitter is people say you need to read City Press on Sundays if you want to understand what's going on in South Africa, in politics, in the current affairs landscape, and that's really where we want to be.
You've used the word politics 3 times. What do your readers want in terms of political coverage?
Well, the most important thing our readers want is jobs, actually, and tenders, and then they want politics. So
that's a fairly large section of the paper, isn't it? Your jobs and tenders,
yeah. Yes, and we hope to grow that part. But if you look behind you at our wall, you'll see that we know exactly what works with our readers and what doesn't. So sadly, social covers don't work. Politics pushes the City Press sale. It's core to our thinking, to what we are. It was very important before Polokwane. We want to make it very important before Mangaung as well.
I noticed one of your big circulation spikes was when you had Julius Malema as a headline. Does he still sell newspapers?
Well, as Mr. Malema has said many times, he sells newspapers, and he certainly does. He was one of the more exciting figures on the political scene, and we've covered him very closely, and sometimes he's felt a little bit too closely. But he does, yes, as does Jacob Zuma.
Adriaan, who do you see as your biggest competitor?
Definitely the Sunday Times. I mean, that's the market that we're playing with, and they're the biggest Sunday paper. They're still beating us by far. But I think, we're doing well getting there. I think, if you look at the type of stories they've been doing, it's also a focus on investigations, also politics. And the Sunday Times is really an institution in South Africa. It's a much older newspaper. People buy it out of habit. We City Press is much newer, much younger newspaper. So that also gives an advantage to play a bit, I think the Sunday Times buyer has some kind of idea what to expect. There's a package there that obviously works. That we compete with.
Ferial, when you arrived, what was it, a year, 18 months ago, maybe a bit longer, what did you inherit?
I inherited the key Pan-African newspaper in the country. I think I inherited a paper that really loved a former president, and he was no more, and its identity rocked a little bit. So it's taken us a while to find out what is it we're going to be. It's very important to me that we keep its legacy, its history, its campaigning ability, its love of social justice, and its rootedness amongst people. But my clear brief was also to move it into a wider audience, to make it a more non-racial read, and that's been quite tough, because I think when you come from such a place of Azapo, of Pan-Africanism, to now tell people, both readers and staff, that actually we're going a little bit Obama, we're going a little bit Michael Jackson, we're going a little bit Nelson Mandela. That's a tough shift to make, but I think my colleagues have done it with love and grace in most instances.
Is there a formula to putting a Sunday page together?
I've only just learned it. Sunday.
She said modestly, yeah.
Modestly. Sunday papers are very different to where I come from, which is the Mail and Guardian, strongly investigative, very cerebral. Now you have to do sex and celebrity and jobs and tenders and careers. You have to have something in there for each part of the family, and you're catering to a very wide age range of people. So I think if we get it right, we'd have learned something.
Sex, celebrities, jobs, tenders. As a political journalist, how does that sit with you, Adriaan?
Well, sex and politics is not so much different anymore. Look, I think at City Press we've got a fantastic team, and I think that's really part of the success. If you look at our fantastic politics team, you know, they're being followed on Twitter, they're being quoted, they're very well out there, and they're doing great work. But then also our entertainment side, we've got Gabi Ndebele, we've got Bokhadi Seabi. They've got thousands of followers, and then we've just got Sharp Lignat, you know, I think that the pop culture writer in South Africa as part of our team. So I think it's about the mix, getting the mix right.
Why is Twitter so important to the success of the Sunday brand?
Well, I mean, it's been interesting. On the Sunday now, you know, I spent almost half of my day after reading the newspapers on Twitter, pushing out stories and reacting with readers. There's a massive community, there's massive interaction. And I think that's interesting. You spoke about print earlier. I think, you know, the interaction with readers is moving away from the printed version to the online sphere, to Twitter, to the website, to blogs. And I think it's pivotal that you're on Twitter. Ferial's on Twitter. She also does a massive amount of correspondence with readers and people who's interested.
Well, you're fairly obsessed with Twitter, aren't you?
Sadly, yes.
Why?
But I'm not stupid about it. I recognize that perhaps only 20% of our readers are on Twitter. But from Sunday morning, readers start telling me where the paper is not, where they can't find it, what they like, what they don't. So it's become a very crucial way for me to talk to readers in ways that isn't as slow as the old letters to the editor. We still get lots of written letters to the editor, often from prison, so you have to be playing across mediums.
Ferial Haffajee, Peter Bruce, who edits the Business Day title, wrote a little earlier this week that you don't edit a newspaper, talking about you engineer it.
Yes.
Is that a compliment or not?
I wasn't sure. With Peter, you don't know, but still I took it as a compliment. I think he was referring to the fact that my colleagues and I do craft. We don't just accept and slap onto page. We think very carefully about how every page looks. We're big on debate, so we set up anti and pro views because we found that our readers do love that. And then I did learn from Caroline Southey this thing called the scoop of interpretation, where you interpret events, and I think that's quite important for a Sunday newspaper.
Let's talk in conclusion about the future of this brand. 30 years on, will there be a City Press?
I don't believe so. I think so. I don't think, you know, I think the end of print, that debate is old. And I think what we're learning now is that the different platforms work in tandem. You know, you can't only have print or internet, you need both. And there's different ways of filing for the internet, filing for the iPad, and tweeting while you're sitting in court or sitting at a political press conference or in Parliament. So I think the brand is going to be there, and I do think paper will be there as well.
Ferial, your view in conclusion?
I think if you look at the Times of London, if you look at the Times of India, if you look at Latin American newspapers, certainly they're going to migrate effectively onto different platforms, but keep what's core to the title. I certainly hope it will be.
Folks, thank you very much for your time, and here's to the next 30 years.
Indeed.
And when Mags on Media continues, the scourge of brown envelope journalism will also take you behind the scenes of a new chocolate bar television commercial when we continue.
Clientele makes life insurance simple for you. For the past 20 years, we've focused on providing you with more accessible life cover. Our premiums are affordable, and we've made it easier to apply for. Simply SMS LIFE to 31767, and we'll call you back to explain the benefits and terms in one friendly phone call. SMS now. Clientele Life. For you.
This card entitles you to enforce your legal rights. From 120 Rand per month, It's about making legal services available to all South Africans. Just SMS RIGHT to 31765 and someone will call you back to explain all the benefits, terms and conditions. Thank you. Cover includes civil, criminal and labor-related matters. Whatever your problem, qualified legal advisors are available to help you 24 hours a day. SMS RIGHT to 31765. SMS now.
Mama,